Well, good morning. Welcome, everyone. This is an open meeting of the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board on March 31, 2015. We want to welcome those of you who have joined us today, both in person and those listening to the webcast of this meeting. Today, the Board will consider a recommendation to adopt amendments to its rules and standards to implement the reorganization of PCAOB auditing standards. And before we proceed with the agenda, I will note for the record that all board members are present. The first and only order of business before the board today is a staff recommendation that the board adopt a framework for reorganizing the board's existing interim and PCAOB issued auditing standards. To present the staff's recommendation on this agenda item, I will turn to our Chief Auditor, Mr. Martin Baumann. Mr. Baumann.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Doty and board members Harris, Ferguson, Hanson, and Franzel. The Office of the Chief Auditor is pleased to recommend that the board adopt the reorganization of PCAOB auditing standards and related amendments to PCAOB standards and rules. Joining me today from the Office of the Chief Auditor to present this recommendation are Robert Ravis, Greg Fletcher, and Hunter Jones. Today, the board's auditing standards consist of, first, sequentially numbered standards issued by the board, sometimes referred to individually as AS7, AS8, and so on. And second, the AU sections representing the interim standards that the board adopted from the profession in 2003 on an interim transitional basis that have not been superseded, sometimes referred to individually as AU 328, AU 332, and so on. Having two groups of separately organized standards is not easy to navigate. For example, in researching the audit requirements that apply to particular circumstances. Thus far, the board has issued 18 auditing standards numbers 1 through 18, which have superseded 12 interim auditing standards and amended the majority of the remaining interim auditing standards to varying degrees. The reorganization project was a multi-step process that commenced in March 2013 when the board issued a proposal that set forth a framework for reordering and renumbering the existing auditing standards in their entirety without redrafting the standards, imposing new requirements on auditors, or making substantive changes to the requirements. Next, in May 2014, after receiving generally positive feedback from commenters on the proposed framework, the board issued a supplemental request for comment on the original proposal. The board proposed line-by-line amendments to PCAOB auditing standards and rules necessary to implement the proposed reorganization, along with certain changes to the reorganization presented in the original proposal. At the same time, the supplemental request for comment was released. The board made available on its website an online demonstration version that presented the existing auditing standards as they would look if reorganized according to the proposed reorganization. Now we are before you to discuss adoption of the reorganization. All of this, from the first board meeting on the proposal to today's meeting on adoption, took about 24 months. The board received 26 comment letters from a variety of commenters, including accounting firms, academics, and other individuals, that generally supported the proposed framework. One commenter stated, quote, "Anything that makes finding information quickly has to be considered positive. The proposed framework appears to meet the goal of finding a standard quickly and easily," close quote. An accounting firm stated, "Adopting such a structure and system will considerably enhance the usability of the PCAOB's auditing standards by stakeholders, including auditors," close quote. With respect to the online demonstration version, approximately 1,200 users viewed the demonstration version during the comment period, indicating a strong interest in this project. The reorganization that the staff is recommending today places existing PCAOB auditing standards, the board-issued auditing standards, and the interim auditing standards, into a topical structure with a single integrated numbering system. The reorganization presents the standards in a logical order that generally follows the flow of the audit process. The reorganization should help users, for example, auditors and academics, navigate the standards more easily. Helping auditors better navigate PCAOB standards could in turn facilitate better compliance with the standards. The reorganization also will serve as a foundation for updating our auditing standards in the future. Under the reorganization, the board would no longer issue a standard as a new, sequentially numbered standard. Rather, future standards will be issued as either a new section within a subcategory or an update of an existing section. Before I turn the floor over to Rob Ravis for further discussion, I'd like to express my appreciation to Greg, Hunter, and Rob, as well as Keith Wilson of the Office of the Chief Auditor, the team that led this project. I'd also like to thank the board members and their staff, as well as Jake Lesser in the Office of the General Counsel, our colleagues in the Center for Economic Analysis, and the other offices and divisions for their valuable advice and contributions. Finally, I'd like to thank the staff of the Securities and Exchange Commission for providing timely and helpful assistance and advice, and for their encouragement to initiate and complete this project. Rob?
Thank you, Marty. Mr. Chairman and board members, I would like to summarize the PCAOB's activities on this project and provide a brief overview of the amendments before making the staff's recommendation. In 2003, the board adopted, on an interim transitional basis, the auditing standards issued by the Auditing Standards Board of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants as they existed at that time. Those standards have been codified by the AICPA using a 3-digit numbering system and a relatively general topical structure. Subsequently, the board has adopted a number of important standards that affect how audits are conducted, including several standards related to audit risk that govern the entire audit process, and the board has amended most of the remaining interim standards. The board-issued standards are sequentially numbered in the order they were adopted, starting with Auditing Standard Number 1, which the board adopted in 2003, through Auditing Standard Number 18, which the board adopted last summer. As Marty stated, the staff developed a new topical approach for organizing its auditing standards, and the board proposed it for comment in March 2013. This proposal included related amendments to PCAOB auditing standards and rules. The reorganization uses a topical structure with an integrated numbering system. The reorganization would reorder and renumber the existing auditing standards in their entirety without redrafting the standards, imposing new requirements on auditors, or making substantive changes to the requirements. The supplemental request for comment the board issued in May 2014 included over 150 pages of line-by-line amendments. Although the amendments did not impose new requirements on auditors or make substantive changes to the requirements, an online demonstration version on the PCAOB's website permitted users to review the proposed amendments. The demonstration version also contained tools to facilitate a user's transition to the new framework. One tool provided a mapping between an existing auditing standard and the corresponding proposed reorganized standard. Another tool presented the proposed reorganized auditing standards with the analogous standards of the International Auditing and Assurance Standards Board and the Audit Standards Board of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. Commenters generally supported the proposed reorganization of PCAOB auditing standards. We also received positive comments on the demonstration version, which, as Marty mentioned, was viewed by over 1,200 individuals. The staff has considered specific comments received through the initial proposal and supplemental requests, and have made some refinements to the organization based on those comments. The amendments before you today would largely update and replace section numbers, titles, and cross-references to implement the reorganization. In addition, other amendments would update certain related PCAOB rules, such as Rule 3500T, by removing the reference to interim standards. The amendments also would replace references to generally accepted auditing standards with references to the standards of the PCAOB. Other amendments would delete certain inoperative language and rescind certain interim auditing standards that were no longer necessary under the reorganized standards. For example, the reorganization would rescind AU Section 150, which contained the basis for the general topical structure that was developed by the AICPA. We envision the navigation tools that were available in the online demonstration version will continue to be available in the final reorganized standards on the PCAOB's website. The release also includes a section that addresses economic considerations and the application to audits of emerging growth companies. As mentioned previously, none of the amendments in this release add new requirements or substantially change the existing requirements for performing and reporting on audits. This includes audits of emerging growth companies. The staff recommends that the Board adopt amendments to its rules and standards to implement the reorganization of PCAOB auditing standards as described in the Action Memorandum and instruct the staff to submit the amendments to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission for approval pursuant to Section 107 of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. This concludes our remarks, and we would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Rob. The reorganization of the PCAOB's auditing standards under consideration today is an important step in promoting investing public's interest in audit quality. This reorganization provides auditors and others a logical framework and easy access to the standards governing the conduct of audits. I want to applaud the staff in the Office of the Chief Auditor who worked on this project, as well as staff in the Office of General Counsel and in the Center for Economic Analysis who provided assistance to the project. And I want to thank the SEC staff for their assistance and their close coordination in this effort. It should come as no surprise to any professional person that auditing literature is extensive. The project involved the complicated task of reordering in a logical fashion the robust volume of existing auditing standards that the profession had developed before the PCAOB was formed, and integrating these with the many new standards that the PCAOB has adopted in the 12 years since. Together, these standards consist of more than 1,000 pages, as you've mentioned, of rule text. Public comment on the proposed reorganization was helpful to ensure that the new topical structure is intuitive and that auditing standards will be easier to find. In this regard, the project didn't stop with the intellectual framework of reordering. The reorganization involved more than 150 pages, as you've said, Rod, of numbering, cross-referencing, other changes to present both the profession's original standards and the PCAOB issued standards in a new framework. To assist users in evaluating the proposed changes in context, the staff has developed an online demonstration version of the reorganized auditing standards, and comments received on that demonstration version of the reorganized auditing standards were helpful in promoting audit quality and compliance by allowing us to make sure that auditors can easily navigate and find the applicable standards. I'm pleased that auditors and other users will no longer have to jump back and forth between what we called interim standards and the PCAOB issued standards. The reorganization does not make additional work for auditors. Rather, it should make professional practice easier. We will now have one set of auditing standards under one integrated framework. Going forward, we will change or add to those standards as needed, consistent with our guidance on economic analysis and the needs that you see in the practice. I want to turn now to my fellow board members for any statements they may wish to make. We will withhold questions, as is our custom, until all board members have a chance to make a statement. Then we'll have time for questions and discussions. With that, I'll call on Board Member Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I support the adoption of the framework for the reorganization of the PCAOB auditing standards that we're considering this morning. And I commend the division for the timely manner for the initiation and completion of this standard. I would ask that my complete statement be submitted for the record. I will very, very briefly summarize it since you've already done so. But as I said in my earlier statement related to this matter, I view the reorganization of our standards as a key step in highlighting the board's responsibility to set auditing standards which auditors of public companies must follow. I also believe the framework that is being adopted today is logical, that it follows the flow of the audit process. I believe that the proposed framework we are considering will result in minimal one-time costs for firms while providing long-term benefits in terms of the streamlining that will occur. I would note that commenters generally support the board reorganizing its standards. I am pleased that the project to reorganize our standards is complete. I now look forward to finalizing a number of the other standards that are on the standard-setting agenda posted on the board's website, and I commend all the staff that's been working on this. And as I said, Mr. Chairman, I'd appreciate your allowing me to submit my full comments for the record.
Of course. Board Member Ferguson.
Yes, thank you. As I said at our March 26, 2013 open meeting regarding the proposal for this reorganization, this represents the first step in what may be a longer journey to improve and update the standards issued by the PCAOB. We have to continue to strive to provide auditors of public companies with a well-organized and easily usable set of standards that can be effectively accessed and searched using today's technologies. This is a good step in the right direction, and I support our adoption today of the amendments to our rules and standards to implement the reorganization of PCAOB auditing standards. And I want to thank the staff of our Office of Chief Auditor, and particularly Keith Wilson, Greg Fletcher, Rob Ravis, and Hunter Jones. I also want to thank the Office of Information and Technology for the support they've provided.
Board Member Hanson.
Thanks. I will just echo the thanks from my fellow board members to all the members of the Chief Auditor's Office, General Counsel's Office, IT, the Center for Economic Analysis. And I'm not going to go through the details. I'll have a statement I'll publish as well, but I am supportive of the idea of having put the standards in a more logical framework that will provide a platform for updates in the future and improve the searchability. Just a couple of comments on observing the things that we did not tackle and have much work to do on. One is we didn't change the words of any standards other than a few references, as has been mentioned, and I think the hard work ahead of us yet to update the standards and holistically make sure they're all written in a similar fashion is substantial work yet ahead of us, and I appreciate the efforts the staff is going through on all those projects. Several commenters, and I know I was personally concerned about the references to outdated United States generally accepted accounting principles in the standards, including simple codification references as well as references to standards that just don't exist any longer. And I appreciate some of those would have been easy changes. Some of them are take a little more fundamental rethinking the approach, and we did not do that. And I'm supportive of this step to get us to this point, but I know we need to work at that effort to get all those taken care of so we don't continue to have outdated references in our new framework. And I also appreciate that we've incorporated some of the implementation guidance from the interim standards into the new framework, and I support that, but I also know we have a lot of work to do to extract all the guidance that we've put together over the years into a more searchable, usable format, and I'm hoping we can make some progress on that in the coming year. But thanks to all for all the hard work.
Board Member Franzel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll also submit some comments to the record and publish them on the PCAOB website. Clearly, I support the proposal before us today. Presenting the PCAOB standards in a logical, topical structure with one numbering system is clearly a good thing if it helps practitioners and academics, which I believe it will. We're finally integrating the board's interim auditing standards adopted 12 years ago with the standards that PCAOB has issued since then, and I'm very pleased that we're finally taking this step. I think this should help with high-quality auditing if the standards are easier for practitioners to use. This should also help making PCAOB standards more accessible and user-friendly, and also facilitate comparison to other sets of standards, such as those of the IAASB, the International Auditing Standards, as well as the AICPA in the United States. Again, helping practitioners know what the differences are, so that they can do a better job on PCAOB auditing standards. Like my colleagues have expressed, I view this as the first step in a long journey of updating our standards and moving forward, and I want to thank the staff for all of their work, not only on this project, but the many other projects that you have going on right now.
Well, as is our custom, we'll have questions. Each board member asking one. We'll rotate down the rank and then go back if there are more. Board Member Franzel, you want to?
I have no questions. I just want to reiterate my support for the project, and thanks to the staff.
I don't have any questions I want to ask either.
Mr. Ferguson?
No questions.
No questions. You did touch on facilitating compliance. And do you want to comment briefly on how we think the reorganization will affect the work of an auditor in performing audits?
Well, certainly, I think a set of standards that's organized following the flow of the audit, from initial stages of the audit through auditor completion of the audit, reporting, SEC reporting matters, et cetera, is just a logical way to look at the audit, better for students to learn our auditing standards and understand how an audit works, and on a day-to-day basis, easier for auditors to, when they're performing audits and looking for what the requirements are in a particular area, to find that particular requirement in our standards. So the search is going to be much better on the part of the auditor. As was mentioned, there will be some one-time costs for the firms to update their methodologies with the references to the new standards, some learning with respect to that, but I think certainly that will not be difficult. And then with all new users with respect to it, I think they'll come upon a set of standards that's much more logical. So it has the ability for greater navigability. Greater navigability, I hope, could help compliance with respect to finding the right answer.
And board members also referenced the standard-setting path that lies ahead of us in the future. How do you think the reorganization affects the ongoing work of the Office of Chief Auditor in reviewing and setting standards in the future?
Well, as was mentioned, first of all, just from a mechanical point of view, new standards will not be new AS numbers, sequentially numbered. They will fit into the new topical structure as updates to the new framework. First of all, but more importantly, we have a number of ongoing projects that this will just work well with. We are in the process of important projects such as looking at the auditor's responsibility for going concern. We have been sharing drafts of a consultation paper with the board and with our at the SEC. A proposal for the supervision of multinational audits. Again, we've been sharing a draft of that proposal with the board and the SEC. Same thing with the use of specialists. We've shared a draft of a consultation paper with the board and SEC, and several other projects such as auditing fair value, where we had a consultation paper last year, a SAG meeting, and the agenda that we intend to publish today for our standard setting indicates that we will be further discussing the details of a planned standard in that area with the SAG in June. So, as was mentioned, there's a lot of work ahead of us on substantive audit projects. That's moving ahead aggressively, appropriate speed, and due attention by the staff, board members, and the SEC. So I think this all is coming together quite well.
Are board members ready to vote? I believe so. Would all board members approving the recommendation please say yes?
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed? Again, congratulations. It appears to have passed. That concludes our business. The vote is unanimous, and we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.